I'm an adjunct faculty here. I teach mathematics over here. I've only been here since, well, in Pam's tutoring program, I've been here since July, June or July. And then I've been recently teaching math 171. But folks asked me to talk, or Gloria, in fact, asked me to come speak in order to talk about a little bit about what I've done in my life and what motivated me to do what I've done, basically. And so I was born in the last century, right? And I lived in a military family. My father was a career military officer, and so he was in the Army, so I'm an Army brat, right? Moved all over the place. I lived across the United States on Army posts and overseas in multiple places, you know, just as a child, you know. And then later in life, I went to West Point, and I graduated from there in 1973. And when I graduated there, I was commissioned a second lieutenant, and I was in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Do you know what that is, Corps of Engineers? Corps of Engineers are the folks that build things for the Army on the civilian side. They also are the ones that enforce the Clean Water Act of the rivers and in the harbors and along the coastlines. They do the construction of the major dams in the United States, clean enforcement of the Clean Water Act. We do most of the major military construction on Air Force bases and Army bases, do construction overseas in accordance with international agreements, those kinds of things. But on the Army side, you know, the green suit side, the side that wears uniforms, they're the folks that do the combat engineering, you know, mines, cratering, building field fortifications, blowing things up, you know. And so I alternated in the military in assignments where I was blowing things up, right? And then I was building things in another assignment. And so I served in line units for many years overseas in Germany and Korea. I commanded, you know, platoons, companies. I was a battalion operations officer, but I also was a public works director. Do you know what that is, public works director? So overseas in a military community, that would be equivalent to like a city engineer. So I was responsible for operations, maintenance, construction, all those kinds of things on this Army base. My last assignment was at Fort Belvoir, where I was responsible for everything there: environmental, wildlife, safety, fire. I was the fire marshal, construction, all of those kinds of things. And so basically throughout my career, I managed groups of people that were involved in engineering, right, doing various kinds of construction or deconstruction as the case may be. And I worked in the Pentagon. I taught at West Point, taught math there. I was an assistant professor. And then I retired from the military as a lieutenant colonel, and then I went to work for the government, and I worked in the intelligence community. And I served in the intelligence community about 19 years. And I did roughly the same kind of thing, where I built facilities not just here in the United States, but around the world, usually in horrible places. And you know, where folks want to shoot at you. So we did that. I did that stuff for many years. I was involved in the operations and maintenance of these structures. I went from place to place, sometimes doing sort of field construction, sometimes building buildings, right, or renovating, usually embassies and things like that. So I spent a lot of time doing that kind of thing, as well as managing large groups of people that were involved in that. And so the largest organization that I managed in the intelligence community was about 500 people, and they were multidisciplinary, you know, carpenters and electricians and nurses and admin people and personnel people and, you know, safety people and all that kind of thing, all in these organizations. And so that's basically what I did until I retired from the intelligence community, which I did in about 2 years ago, and then I moved here. And I lived down at River Landing. So that was basically my career. A lot of stuff associated with engineering, a lot of stuff with managing large groups of people that were involved in diverse activities, right? And so what became important to me is to learn how to motivate people and how to get things done with groups of people. And everybody sort of has to think about that as you go in life and you go out into the workforce and you want to move up in an organization. You're going to have to think about how to motivate people, how to get done what you want to get done. And that's why education is so important, you know, because you need to know what you're doing in order to lead the people that are doing whatever they're doing, right? So what I've done is I've thought about this, you know, a personal philosophy, so to speak, of why I've done what I've done, in order to be where I am today. And so I call it my ABCs, right? So A is act abundantly, B is bloom where you're planted, C is continuously improve, and D is do your best at whatever you do, right? So if you think about acting abundantly, how many people have heard of a book by Stephen Covey called this 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? Have you heard of this book? I know you have, yeah. Anyway, it was a book that was published in what was it, 1988. And when it hit the bookstores, and was sold, it was an immediate bestseller, and it was used by private industry, government, everybody, in order to motivate their workforce in doing, improving the productivity of a workforce, how to make people work together more effectively. But basically what he was talking about was an abundance mentality. He said that in this book, that there is enough success to be shared by everybody, right? Versus what is called a scarcity mindset, which is you win, I lose, right? In that kind of environment, it's not a very effective place to work. In fact, you end up backstabbing and doing all kinds of things. It's not a very healthy place to live. So an abundance mentality when you're living through life is important. Well, what does that mean? Appreciate what others, others' uniqueness. Everybody brings something to the table. And usually it's something unique. And the skill that you need to develop is to work with people with different skills and abilities and put them together so you have an effective team. So appreciate what people's uniqueness are, what their skills are. And that success is a mutually beneficial kind of thing, right? If we're all if I'm successful, we're all successful, right? As opposed to each fighting each other, trying to outdo the other. It's like a basketball team, right? Basically, everybody's got to work together. Each one has an independent skill, right? Some are good at shooting long shots, some are good for the layup, all that kind of thing. But when they work together and they're all successful, everybody is successful, right? The third thing is that there's unlimited opportunities for growth and improvement in an environment like that, so you want to foster that kind of environment when you go out into the workplace and you begin to do whatever it is that you're going to do. And then you need to recognize that there's 3 ways to do something, right? My way, your way, and the best way, And the way you do the best way is when both of us, you and I, are working together, And so that's basically what an abundance mentality is about. Appreciating the success that everybody has and that there's enough to share with everybody. The other thing that goes along with acting abundantly, in my opinion, is remaining calm in all weather, right? When I was in the intelligence community, I had to go overseas to a conflict area. I spent about a year or so over there. They sent me off to the Command and General Staff College at Fort Leavenworth in Kansas. And the Army Chief of Staff at the time was talking to us. His name was Casey at the time, General Casey. And he said, you need to remain calm in all weather as a commander, right? Well, that's true about a commander. But it's also true about us individually, in the workplace. Whatever it is that you're doing. What does that mean? It means I need to assume noble intent. Do you know what that means? Assuming noble intent? That means that when somebody does something wrong and you take it the wrong way, like, well, that person did that deliberately to hurt me, assume instead that that person made a mistake. They didn't know what they were doing. They didn't intend to do it, it just happened. It was a mistake. Assume noble intent when you're working with people, right? Rather than trying to find fault or taking it negatively as you go along. The other thing is, don't take yourself too seriously, right? You need to have a sense of humor, right? Folks that know me, I have no sense of humor, so I try a lot to work on this, but you need to have a sense of humor. Sense of humor lightens things. When you're working with people that are in a stressful situation and you have a sense of humor about that kind of thing, it lightens the situation. It takes the stress. It makes people want to work as opposed to being intimidated and worried and fearful and all of that kind of thing. So a sense of humor is very important. Now, I'm not talking about bad jokes and all those kinds of. I'm just talking about a positive outlook on life, a sense of humor about life, And then the other thing that I'm very concerned about all the time is courtesy and respect. Aren't you? Courtesy and respect. Don't you want to be respected for what you do, and don't you appreciate it when people are courteous to you, right? Rather than snapping your head off every time you say something or jumping on you or just being impolite for no reason. You know, it doesn't make a very good work environment. And so to me, remaining calm in all weather is those things. And, you know, assuming noble intent, having a sense of humor, and being courteous and respectful to other people, you know, in your life. And then the third thing about acting abundantly is something I always told my folks that worked for me in the service industry, right, that took care of the posts and whatnot, is the service you do for others is the rent you pay for your place on earth, right? And so there should always be opportunities for you to help in your community, at home, at school, wherever it is, you know. Giving back is what's important, I think, when you're acting abundantly, you know. So the second, the B, is bloom where you're planted, right? I say this to people all the time. I used to say it to my sons all the time, right? You need to bloom where you're planted, right? Nowhere on your birth certificate does it say that life is successful. I mean, life is fair, right? That block check, it doesn't say that, right? So you have to bloom where you're planted. You have to take it as it comes, you know? You need to be present in the world, right? Not thinking about something else, you know, worrying about what could have been, what might have been, what ought to be. You know, you need to be present in the world. And so there was a study that was recently done. I read this a year or two ago. It was published in the Harvard Journal of Science. And it was, 2010 it was published, and these two guys, Killingsworth and Gilbert were their name. Take a look at where your mind is, you know, most of the time. And they found out that when they did the research, that 47% of the time, your minds are elsewhere. I'm not just talking a couple of you, all of you, all of us, right? 47% of our minds are elsewhere. It's not focused on what we're doing. It's not focused on studying. It's not focused on taking care of your family. It's not those kinds of, it's elsewhere, you know, worrying about, why am I dinging here? Something's... These technology sometimes is a curse and a blessing, you know.
Is that a reminder or something?
No, I'm just looking at it. So, maybe I got too excited. Right? So, anyway, they did this study, and what they found out that our minds are pervaded by the non-present, right? We're thinking about, I should have done this, I should have done that, maybe I could do this, maybe it ought to be this way. You know, it's always worrying about what is normally caused in English writing, the subjective tense, right? You know, so you need to clear your mind of that kind of stuff in order to focus. But anyway, what they found out is that it's a predictor of happiness. If your minds are constantly wandering, that's a pretty good indication that you're not as happy as you could be, right? Because you're focused on things that are not necessarily going to happen, or things that you cannot change at all, right? It is things that in the subjective tense, right? So that was what they studied. So to me, what you need to do is to stay sort of, you need to clear your mind of clutter and focus on what it is that you're doing. The task at hand, you need to expect changes when that happens, because nothing is perfect. You know, no plan survives initial contact with the enemy, as we used to say in the Army. What's true in life too, right? Not that you all are enemy. I mean, just saying that's an Army thing. And then, has anybody ever heard of the Serenity Prayer?
Yes.
Oh, yes. People say that all the time, and it was written by a guy named Reinhold Niebuhr, who was a very eminent religious person who did a lot of writing. And the part that we remember the most, right, is give us grace to accept with serenity the things that cannot be changed, courage to change the things which should be changed, and the wisdom to distinguish the one from the other. Isn't that what you've heard before? Did you know that there's more to it? Yeah. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking as Jesus did the sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make things right if I surrender to your will, and that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next, right? That's the full prayer, right? But the part that we remember the most is the first part, right? And no, I'm not trying to teach a religious course here. I'm just saying it's a decent philosophy, right? Something to think about. To expect changes and know that changes are going to happen, and there are some things you just cannot do anything, so why worry about it, right? You need to adapt and overcome, as they say in the Marines, right? So anyway, so that's That's that part, focusing on the task at hand. The other thing is, you need to seek opportunity wherever you can find it, which is what you guys are doing here, right? You're trying to find some information that might help you in your studies or in your future life, and that's a good thing to be in a mentoring program like this, because that's where you find it, right? You take risks, you challenge yourself, you make connections. That's what you're doing here. You're making connections with one another so that you have sort of a network here that can help you out as you're studying through course. And then you need to work hard too. And I know you all work hard. It's that goes with being a student, right? And you're sitting here in this class, so you're taking time out of your schedule to be here. So you're doing something to improve yourself. You're seeking opportunity. You're working hard. And then you need to make the most of each day, right? It's easy to sit down on the couch and watch reruns of, I don't know, Gulliver's Island or whatever. I mean, do you guys even know what that is, Gulliver's Island? Or whatever, In any event, or Gilligan.
Yeah.
Sometimes they get words wrapped
Well,
around.
we know some of those.
Sweet faces.
The second thing you need to worry about, in blooming where you're planning, is appreciating where you are, right? Where you are right now. And to me, what that requires is doing what is known as reflective thinking. Does anybody know what that is, reflective thinking? Do you ever get in your car as you're driving home from school and start thinking, boy, I wish I had done better on that test. If I had only done this, if I had just studied that, I wish I hadn't said this to this other person. The next time that kind of thing happens, I think I'll do this, right? That's reflective thinking, right? And it's important that we all do that, and we do it routinely, and we do it habitually, and we do it in the same place every day, so that when you're doing this reflective thinking, it becomes a learning experience for you, right? So reflective thinking is very, very important, I think, in trying to do it. So I've already told you when you do it. Where do you do it? It doesn't matter. It could be in your car. It could be out here, sitting in one of these soft sofas, right? Where I see sometimes students falling asleep.
Yeah.
Right. But, sitting in the sofa and thinking about what you want to do. It could be in your easy chair. It could be while you're doing your jogging, while you're walking the dog. That's my favorite, walk the dog when you think about things, is we usually go for about a mile, if she's feeling like it. And then how do you do it? Well, you think from small to large, right? Or large to small. Either way you want to look at it. So you look at your day. You look at work. You look at life. You do it from small to large, right? Or large to small, however you want to look at it. But you do it habitually. You look at the big picture. And then why do you do this? So that you get some kind of perspective on what's going on in your life, right? You want to increase your confidence, because if you've thought about something and you've worked out sort of a plan of what you're going the next time it happens, right? You're prepared, aren't you? So it gives you confidence, right? It makes you, it eases the stress, And then you learn from your mistakes. I mean, there are more things done in life, right, that end up being mistakes because people haven't thought about what they're doing before they do it, right? So that's why you do reflective thinking, is to get to that point where you've worked out what you want to do. Now, I'm not saying you can work out your entire life, right, that way, and you can't put it down in a book somehow, have a plan, that you follow and check things off. But I'm saying you think about it, right, so you're prepared as best you can. And then, also, when you do that, you get ideas about something to do. It may be unrelated to what you were doing. It could be something else altogether, but it gives you ideas. So to me, that's what it means when you're bloom where you're planted. To be present in the world. It means to appreciate where you are right now. And it means, accepting changes and thinking about what it is that's going on, right, in your life. So the C now is to continuously improve. And when I think about continuous improvement, I think about 3 areas: mind, body, and spirit, right? That's what everybody thinks about, mind, body, spirit. So in your mind, what I suggest you guys do, and I know a lot of you do it, is you look at the world through child's eyes. Have you ever looked at a small child, how they look at the world? It's wonder, it's awe, it's excitement, it's you want to learn. Why are things the way that, why this, Daddy, why that? How come this, Dad, how come that? All those kind of, show me how to do this, how can I do that? That's the way a child is. And so no matter how old we are, we should be looking at the world through child's eyes and having the same kind of sense of wonder and excitement about what's going on and so on. Then we need to learn, right? We need to learn. And how do you learn? A variety of ways, but why do you learn? To expand your horizons, you know, and the older you get and the more experiences you have, of course, they're based on real experiences. But a lot of what we learn is vicarious. Has everybody heard that word before, vicarious? That means like when you read in a book, and let's say you read about Switzerland, so you know what the countryside looks like, right? You've never actually been there. You may see pictures of it. That's vicarious learning. So you've learned something about someplace remote. You've never been there, but you've learned something about it, right? So you do that through reading, right? And you do it through education. Now, a guy like me, old, right, 1 foot in the grave and all that kind of stuff. You know, I love to learn, and I do it all the time. There are courses or programs online. Coursera, right,
Yeah.
is one of the courses where you.
edX,
Yeah,
edX is another one.
yeah.
Coursera.
UNCW has programs for adults in the evening in a special school over there where you can go and learn all kinds of things, right, about whatever it is that you want to learn. Most county programs have, you know, adult education courses where you can go and learn things. There's a program called Road Scholar. Ever heard of that? Road Scholar, R-O-A-D, not R-H-O-D-E. But anywhere you can sign up for trips and go there on the cheap, basically, and learn something about a location, let's say Quebec or something, right? And but it's led, and you learn something about going there. Anyway, so there's ways of continuing your education even when you're out of school, and you need to be doing that because you should be looking through the eyes of a child at your world around you, you know. You should develop hobbies. How many people have hobbies? Just about, you know, a lot of people do. But why do you have a hobby, right? Why is that? Yeah, it's creative, right? It's creative. Most of the time it's creative. You're sparking creativity in your mind. You're building confidence because you're doing something new and being successful at it, right? Most of the time while you do it is relieving stress, right? I'm going to put the books down. I'm going to stop thinking about the midterm. I'm going to do, I don't know what, whatever it is that you do, right? And it also makes you interesting people, right? I mean, how many of you guys have gone to, let's say, a block party or something like that in your neighborhood and just want to talk to them about, like, say, algebra, right? People would avoid you like the plague, right? They wouldn't want to talk to you.
They would love
But if you have a hobby, I don't know, let's say photography, right?
Yeah.
And you've been out and you travel around, you're taking pictures, you observe things about, and you put some things in shows or up on the internet, and you can talk about these experiences. Generally, that makes people interested in what you're having to say, right? So it makes you an interesting person. It also connects you with other people because usually the types of hobbies that you get involved with has a small community associated with it. So you meet people that way, just like you're doing right now, right? I'm not saying mentoring is your hobby, but it's kind of like that, right? And then it broadens your perspective on the world, so that's why you need to have hobbies. And then the one thing that I always stress to everybody, in particular my sons, is communications. You always need to be working on your communication skills, right? Both oral and written, right? Now, I know that people are on the internet and they send texts with their thumbs and at speeds I can't even comprehend, and they do all of this stuff, right? And that's how they communicate, and it's usually in LOL and all this other kind of stuff, right? I mean, yeah, that's a form of communications, but if you go out into the business world, right, and you want to get a job, and you're trying to convince people to hire you, you have to be able to communicate well, right? You have to be able to do that. And a lot of times when you're applying someplace, as I did when I did here, you had to write something, right? So you had to be comprehensive. Somebody had to comprehend what you were saying, and it had to be in a uniform, orderly kind of way. And the only way you get good at communications is by doing it. It's just like anything else in life, right? It's like I tell the students in MA 171, if watching TV on NFL Sunday makes you into a great running back, I'd be the best running back in the world, right? But it doesn't work that way, right? It doesn't work that way. You have to actually do it, right? And have the skills to be able to do it, and so on. And then I talk about the body. You know, fitness is important. You need to take care of yourself. particularly as you get older. I mean, there's an age you hit, and I've hit it, right, where things start going south on you, you know, and you gotta, and if you don't start taking care of yourself, you know, you can put yourself in an early grave, right? And so fitness and health is very important, going to the doctors and doing something. Now, I'm not saying everybody out needs to be a marathon runner or those kinds of things, but you can get out walking 2 miles a day, right? Those kinds of things. And then you need to make your spirit strong, right? It's mind, it's body, it's also spirit. There's something inside of everybody that needs to be fed on a daily basis so that you can face the world confidently, you know. And however it is that you do that, you need to do it, right? Not ignore it. It's 3 parts, mind, body, and spirit, right? And then finally, do your best. And to me, it's doing your best in 4 areas. Personally, with your family, it's within your community, and finally at work, you know, because life isn't all about work, right? It's more about yourself and your family and your community than it is about work, right? And so personal, to me, I think everybody needs to be accountable. I encourage people to be accountable for what it is that you do. You need to make a difference, right? Wherever you are, you need to make a difference. There was a book that was written several years ago, when was it? 2004, and it's called Cowboy Ethics, right? Now I know the name sounds kind of funny, but it was written by a man named James Owen, who was an investment manager on Wall Street. And he realized, sort of late in life, that there's something wrong with our business world, our financial world, you know, and that we need to be living in a place where we have shared values based on personal character, right? That's what it needs to be. No matter where you work, it needs to be that way. And so he wrote the book called Cowboy Ethics, and it's based on the Code of the West, right? My favorite movies are Westerns, I don't know. I like to watch Westerns. And basically, what is the Code of the West? It means honor and truthfulness. It means admitting mistakes. It means a handshake means something when you make a deal, right? It means your word is your bond. It means you're dependable. It means that you're on time, you know. It means all those things. My dad used to tell me, if you're not 5 minutes early, you're late, right? Is what he used to tell me. And if you think about it this way, if several 100 million years ago, if that comet that hit the Earth and killed the dinosaurs was 5 minutes late, we wouldn't be here. Dinosaurs would be still roaming the world, right? So don't be late, right? Be on time. If you say you're going to be there on time, be there on time, right? So you need to be somebody that they can count on. In the community, I say leave it better than you found it, right? And how do you do that? You know, through service, by being a good neighbor, and everybody knows what that means in your communities, right? But it means leaving it better than you found it. And then finally, well, and then also your family. There's 3 P's associated with families, in my opinion. There's preserve, protect, and provide for your family. How do you preserve your family? Well, a family is a relationship, right? And relationships aren't easy. They require work, right? You know, I've been married for a long time, and I know it requires work. You know,
Who's your wife here?
she would agree. You know, because I'm not exactly the easiest guy to get along with, you know. But anyway, you know, you have to preserve the relationships that you have in your family, and you do that through work, and it's through compromise, and it's by giving things up, you know, that you make a family strong. It's not by doing whatever you want to do and to heck with everybody else, right? It's a family unit, right? Most of the things that I know today and the things that caused me to be the person I am are the things that my mother and father taught me, right? And so I feel that that's a very important aspect of life. So, and then you protect the family. How do you do that? Insurance, wills, by having savings, by planning ahead, you know, those kinds of things are how you protect your family. And then of course you provide for your family, and you do that by going to work and getting, you know, earning money and doing all those kinds of things. Then finally at work, you know, when you want to do your best at something, you need to be technically proficient at what you do, so that means more learning, right? You're always studying for the next level, right? You're always studying for the next level, right? Trying to learn what's going on. You want to be part of the process, right? Not be an impediment to the process, not being a monkey wrench in the works, you know, but being part of the process. And then you want to ride for the brand, right? That's part of this Code of the West, right? Riding for the brand. Have you ever thought about that? Out in the West, back in, let's say, the late 1800s, you know, sometimes a cowboy's out there checking fences all by himself, right? All by himself, checking stuff. and, you know, and this horse has a brand, you know, say my kid, the Lazy H, right? You know, or the Circle H, or whatever you want to call that brand. And when you come across people, right, how do they know that person? By the brand on the horse. So what do you want to be? You want to act like a jerk, right? And run these people off, and so they think that the ranch that you're working for is a jerk and they're not going to do any business with you, right? Or do they say, that guy was a helpful fella, you know, he showed us where to go, or whatever it was that he did, right? So if you're riding for the brand you're representing, does that work just in the business world? No. It works as a family, you know? I always told my kids, you guys are hazes, right? And us hazes don't do that kind of thing, right? That's not how we represent our family, you know? And the same is true for all of you, I'm sure, if you're mothers, that you've told your kids the same thing, right? So, that to me are the ABCs of life, right? Acting abundantly, blooming where you're planted, continuously improve, and do the best at whatever you're doing, right?
All right.
Very good.
Any questions?
Do you guys have any questions? Ask, comment, ask.
I know Miss Lee's got something to
I
comment.
think I kept it in that time limit, well, just a tad over.
I think the serenity prayer, I think that's what it is. I read that in a couple of books. It said something about God giving the serenity
Yes,
to accept the things I can, the courage to know the difference, wait a minute, the courage
right.
to, something, I know it's a God giving me.
accept with serenity the things that cannot be changed,
Right,
courage
to know
to
the
change the things.
things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
That's right. There's another prayer that I have, and I'll just sort of summarize it. Let us recognize what is important and what is unimportant, so that we may never forget the things that matter and never allow the things that do not matter to matter too much,
Right.
right?
How was your experience at West Point?
That was my experience.
Yeah, at West Point, because I went to, the high school I went to, one of my colleagues, well, he was 1 year, you know, for us. He went to what, he is a West Point graduate.
Right. So West Point is a four-year school, for those of you that don't know it. You get in there and you graduate with a degree, a Bachelor of Science degree. But you also graduate with a commission in the Army, right? And usually, well, not usually, always, you get assigned to some branch of the Army. The Army has many branches within it, you know, infantry, armor, field artillery, all that. I went into the Corps of Engineers. But my degree was in applied science and engineering, right? At the time, everybody got that degree, a Bachelor of Science degree. Later in life, you know, when I was going back there to teach, they sent me to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. Has anybody ever heard of that? It's in Albany, New York. It's a very good school, actually. You know, it's an engineering school, computer science and things like that. My degree was in applied mathematics, right? So my master's degree is in applied mathematics. And so I spent 2 years there getting that master's degree so that at the end of that I could go back to West Point and teach. And also, I was thinking ahead, and I knew I was going to be coming here to James Sprunt, and then Pam would ask me. But 4 years at West Point was challenging because it's a military school, right? I mean, you have military duties both during the school year and during the summers, right? You only get a small amount of leave, so basically it's 4 years of working constantly. It's good for you. Right, it's good for you.
Yeah.
You know, it's, what is it? Like it said on the, above the door to the cadet gymnasium, on the fields of friendly strife are sown the seeds, then on other days and on other fields will bring forth the fruits of victory. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the athletic field, it could be also in the classroom. You know who said that?
No.
Douglas MacArthur, right? So, anyway, I don't want to keep you guys any longer, but I'm happy to talk to anybody that wants to say something.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That was good, eh?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk to you folks.
It was good?